All right. Well, now we're going to visit with Bess
Well,
Griffin-Girgich.
I just thought Carla and women would be interested in my mother's life
Yes.
on
I
a
was gonna ask you
farm.
about that.
And she was a school teacher originally, had her first school in Nortonville at the age of 17, and taught there for 2 years before she married and moved here to the ranch. But for instance, her life was getting up 4:30 or 5 in the morning, and you had breakfast, and she very often helped on the milking the cows, but her particular job was churning in the separator, which was all this myriad little pieces, and it separated, and then you had to take it all to pieces and wash it after you did the separating, with no hot water except what you heated on the stove, which of course you start first thing in the morning. So you have to boil the water to sterilize this, and this is twice a day this had to be done. It's to wash all this separator and then put it back together. And of course then breakfast and getting children off to school or whatever. And then the garden to take care of, because she did most of the vegetable gardening, at least all the, not the heaviest work maybe. And the main meal was at noon, so you had to cook a full-size dinner at noon. And then in the afternoon, whenever she had time, she did quilting and embroidery, all the things that women did in those days. I don't think there was made rugs, rag rugs with all the old clothes were cut up to make rugs. So that any spare time went into that. Then in the evening there was a supper, which was lighter than the main, and then this milking and separating all over again. And of course feeding the chickens, I forgot about that. That came in someplace. But it was just absolute constant work. Washing, you had a great big copper boiler that you covered most of the front of the wood stove, and the clothes had to be boiled to get and scrubbed on a board. And it was years before she had even a wringer that worked, that you wrung the water out of them, and you did two or three times on wash day, and hanging them out on the line. And ironing was a constant job with an iron that you put on the stove to get it hot. And then to keep it hot, of course, you had to keep putting it back and forth or have 2 irons. Everything was done the hard way and hard work. So women's life on the farm was not easy. And of course, canning fruit in summer, I remember one day we did 100 jars of apricots, and then they'd get boxes of peaches would come all at once. Sit up all night sometimes, peeling and canning peaches before they spoil. That was the main part of our winter fruit, was canned. Drying apricots and drying figs, drying apples, all of these you had put them out during the day and take them in at night. Everything was hard work, but and no money. My mother had to beg for every cent when she'd go into town to buy groceries, or whatever we had to buy. So it was not an easy life that young people now just have no idea of the amount of work it took just to keep food on the table and help take care of the animals. And when we had pigs, which we had most of the time, we never wasted anything. That food was cooked in water was all saved for the animals. Most of the good stuff probably went out with the water that you cooked in.
Every part of the chicken was eaten, I can confirm that.
Yeah.
We had lots of those.
And we personally, when we slaughtered pigs or calves, the parts that weren't really wanted in the stores were all of the what do they call them, the extra foods, the brains and the tongue and the things that I still like.
So you ate a lot
Heart.
of that stuff
Yes,
because you couldn't sell it.
we didn't know that we all ate and sold what people wanted. But I still like all those things that nobody else really wants because we were raised with them. And in fact, I raised my own sons during the war when food was hard to get, or meat was hard to get. Nobody wanted those, so we had tongue and heart and liver and all the good stuff.
Tell us a little bit about how you prepared those things.
Just fried most of
Just
them,
fried?
very simply. We didn't have any fancy cooking, just a wood stove. That was
give us an example of some typical meals that you would have. What you would serve for the main lunch meal.
Well, if we had meat, which was maybe once a week, then we would have meat and always potatoes and vegetables and usually fruit for dessert. Very little lettuce. We had vegetables, but we didn't grow lettuce. I don't know. Salads were something that weren't big. Lots of eggs, cooked eggs in many ways, and bacon. A lot of bacon because we had our own pigs and would keep the bacon.
Did you smoke? Did you smoke the like the bacon?
No.
No. No.
No.
Did you assist with any of the slaughtering of the animals or preparation of the meat?
Well, the pigs particularly, we'd have to help scrape the skins. You had to scrape all the bristles off.
And how did you do that? What did you use?
We had some sort of scrapers. Do you remember what we scraped the pigs with?
How long would if
No,
you
I
had
don't,
a
Thinking.
The pigs were hauled up on the tree over there and dropped into this big boiling cauldron. I think Tom still has it out here someplace. And boiling hot water, and you drop the pig in until it softened the bristles, and then hauled it out and had to scrape the. It was quite an operation.
Was it smelly?
Yes,
Smelly. Yeah.
a lot of things were smelly.
Right.
Did you said you used all parts of the animal. Did you use the blood?
We made blood sausage, my mother did, and head sausage. You cooked the heads and then took all the meat off and pressed it into down into a solid mass. Like you can still buy that in stores.
So is that something that you would just make for yourselves, or could you?
No,
also
that
sell
was just for ourselves. No, the main parts, the bodies usually were sold. It was all the extra parts that we kept.
So did you ever get to eat the better parts or the main parts of the pig or the cow, or just the?
Well, I suppose we did, but I don't remember because that was worth money, and so that was pretty well sold.
So you said you ate meat like once a week. So the rest of the week, what? You would just have like potatoes?
Eggs and potatoes and bacon. We usually had bacon around. Once in a while, there was a little guy'd come around once a month or so with fish. And down on the road, and we'd go down and buy it. But that was a rare, maybe once a month, if that.
Wasn't there a fishmonger in town? One of the that would come. And
Oh
bring
yes,
it
there was
out?
fish in town, but we didn't buy
Didn't he
things.
bring a cart out? I thought I'd heard he would and ring a bell.
Yes, that may have been the one that came along on the roads here,
Uh-huh.
where we.
Did your family ever buy wine from?
No, we didn't drink at all.
Because I know there was one of the, I don't remember which family would bring a jug of wine, and you could buy you know.
We
soften it
never
into a jug.
had wine or any alcohol in the house ever that I can remember.
Was that for religious purposes?
No.
Or no, just good health.
Just
healthy living.
wine costs money.
Yeah.
One of Tom's sons owns the largest family-owned winery in Washington State now.
Tom's does.
Background to that, yes.
Yeah, that's Robert.
Yeah.
That's Robert,
Robert is a wine vintner. Is that the word?
yeah.
Winemaker.
He's a winemaker. He runs a
Winemaker.
winery and has spent his whole life doing that and built a very large one.
And he's the one that wrote the
He's the one that wrote the
pamphlet.
family history or the
Right.
Alhambra Valley history in high school.
Bess, what was your mother's name?
Jessie Elizabeth Dukes. And the Dukes family were very prominent over in Pleasant Hill, where Pleasant Hill Road and Grayson, that all of the area south of that in that area belonged to Grandfather Dukes. A large area back into the hills. And they had a very successful ranch there.
And she then went as a young woman to Nortonville.
Well, she had to come into Martinez to go to high school because there wasn't any high school, and lived with a family named Ludden, who eventually became part of the Hoy family, if you've heard of Jimmy Hoy. Yeah, well, and finished high school, and then had, I think, 1 year when she was 16 in, I'm not sure where she went, to get 1 year of teacher's college. And then when she was 17, went to Nortonville as a grade school teacher.
I believe you gave us a letter of recommendation. Was it a school in Stockton, I'm thinking? I'll have to look
That
at-
probably was Stockton. Yes, I think it was.
You donated that letter where she's being recommended
Yeah.
for this position.
In Nortonville.
Nortonville.
That's the old mining.
Yeah.
Town. Does she have stories about that you are familiar with?
No, she never talked about it much. Except that some of her students were bigger and older than she was.
Children today are often homeschooled. Did she, as a former school teacher, did she teach either of you or the two of you to read? Or
Oh yes, we
Before you went to
we
school?
both read before we went to school. And she was interested in studying all her life. When I was in high school, she'd take all my geometry and all those and work them herself just to keep her hand in on it. And read all the books that we were studying, and of course they read to us, or she did almost every night when we were growing up. So
And was this by candlelight? When did you have electricity out here on the farm?
when they built the house, each room had like a drop down in the center of the room with a bulb on it.
It was incredibly dark. You
Yeah.
walked into that house and just everything was dark, except for one room that Tom built later. It must have been
Later, after
the
I'd
40s.
left.
Yeah.
Well, it was paneled in what was supposed to be golden oak, which immediately turned dark. And then there's one little drop light in the middle of each room. And we studied in the kitchen with a light that dropped right down like that over the kitchen table.
And that house was across the creek.
No, it was right
Oh,
here.
it was-
Back here.
Oh, it's here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But not the house that's currently standing.
No, it's all
No, I helped tear it down in college, so that would
Oh,
have
really?
been
totally gone.
late 50s, early 60s.
And did Tom built this house?
This
am I
one
right?
that's,
The one that's here now.
yes.
What year was that?
When did you build this house?
It was a 40 work in progress.
1940?
Yeah, 40s.
Are
Somewhere.
you finished building it? Is it finished?
Yeah.
Finished.
You're not adding being twins, I'm interested in the fact that you're twins. My daughter has twins, and I know what it's been like to watch them grow up. Can you tell us what it's like to be a twin?
Well, you always had company. I just can't imagine how it would be not to have somebody in your own age group around all the time. And
Did you ever develop your own language? You know, twins sometimes do that.
no, I don't think we did that.
No. And where were you born?
Right here.
Right here.
I say my father delivered us because the doctor didn't get here in time. My older brother had gone into town to tell him to come, and by the time he got back here, we would have arrived, but they had no idea they were twins.
Really?
Although my mother was 5 feet tall, and the two of us weighed 14 pounds between us. So my father used to say it was a joke that she had to turn sideways to get into the barn. She was so big. But they didn't know it was twins until we were delivered.
Who was born first?
I was.
You were.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Oh my.
And
And were you premature?
no, full term. No, we each weighed almost 7 pounds.
Oh
I
my.
think there was a family story that they only recorded Mom. And
Oh, really?
Tom didn't know that until he went into the military, or was I recalling that correctly?
Yeah.
And they found there was no birth.
Dr. Marathu,
Dr.
Marathu put on my birth certificate that I was a twin, but never made a birth certificate for Tom.
Well, I've heard stories about Dr. Marathu. I'm beginning to think maybe some of them were accurate.
Just be glad he's not your doctor.
So maybe it was lucky he didn't arrive in time to deliver you. What did your father do with the delivery? Did you hear a story about how
Well,
that all-
he delivered all the animals. I mean, he knew all how you went about it and what you did, and the cleanup and everything.
But they weren't prepared for 2 babies.
No,
so-
they weren't, and so this was one place that all the neighbors chipped in and helped bring baby clothes and things. And there was a lot of excitement because there weren't twins were quite unusual, and. One of the stories was my mother's parents, the Duke's father, her father and mother came to see us here a day after we're born, and she's pretty exhausted, and they come in and they say, "Isn't it too bad you'll never live to see them grown?" You're a brand new mother. My mother was 40 and father 50. And that was almost unheard of then for a woman to have a baby at 40 and then to have twins.
And how long did she live?
Well, I think we were 35 or so. But she lived to be 75, I
So
think.
she did see you to grow
So,
up. Are there any other twins in your family?
no,
Not since?
never before or after. Anyway, Tom and I used to have a lot of squabbles and fights, but they weren't all that way. And I was jealous of him because I thought everyone liked him better than me. I think with some good reason.
Did you share the same friends, or did you have separate?
We pretty well shared the same friends up until high school, at least. Well, we didn't have any choice because the friends were who was here. And then in high school, Tom was in a different class. They pushed me one class ahead to keep us apart in grammar school. So I was a year ahead of him in high school, and it had quite a different group of friends.
Why did they want to keep you apart?
I used to tattle on him in class.
Well, when we were in grammar school, in the same class, I'd say something and she'd jump up and say, "That's not true. He didn't do it that way."
Well, she's been very restrained while you were telling your stories.
I say, I think if I got nasty to him, it was because I was jealous of him.
Was he very protective of you?
Well, yes,
Big brother?
yeah, that was one of the nicest parts that came out of it. I remember a cousin and I got into some sort of a fight, and Tom came to my rescue and hauled him off, and I was so thrilled to have him rescued.
Sister.
No, it was a very rewarding thing to have a twin.
Yeah, I think it must be. Just to have someone that always understands you. Is
You
that
don't have
right?
to explain background to them.
Yeah. Bess, you told a story the other day about getting into trouble with some eggs. Can you tell us that story?
Oh, well, that's the only time I was ever spanked was because we had a little wagon filled with sand, and I went around and collected eggs because the chickens were free-range chickens, really free-range, and they'd lay their eggs wherever they decided to do it, and so there were certain places that they liked. And I had this little wagon and went around and collected eggs and broke them into the sand and stirred it all up. Came and told my mother had made a pudding. that was something you weren't allowed to do, was ruin food. So I got a spanking for it.
Your mother spanked you? Or
Yeah.
Your mother
Not
spanked
very
you?
well. I wouldn't say it was a very hard spanking.
So what did you do? What did you do when
Quit
she
making
spanked you?
pudding.
Nothing I could do. The eggs were gone.
Eggs were gone.
So with all the animals that you had around here, did you have any animals that you considered pets, or were they just all, things that you had to take care of and sources of food?
We had a pet lamb for a very short time because it only lived a very short time. But some neighbor had a sheep that died and left this baby lamb, and so we took it. And I can remember rushing home from school to try to give it a bottle and feed it. And but it just lived a few weeks, I think. That's about the only pet that I ever remember having. You had pet calves, didn't you?
Well, sort of, yeah.
They were kind of pets.
That, you didn't dare get to be too friendly because eventually you'd be eating them.
Yeah.
So was that ever hard for you to see these animals killed in order to eat? Was that just the way life was?
That's just the way it was. And you were glad to have meat once in a while.
Where did you play along the creek, Bess? Right here?
Mostly up this way because all of our toilets and so forth ran right down here into the creek, so we weren't supposed to play right in the area right there. So we either had to go up this way a little or down the other way.
And you told me the other day there was a place further down that you
That
liked.
was a half-mile down where it all leveled out. You could most of this is too steep. You'd have to climb down a bank to get to the. But farther down where it leveled out, we'd go and play and make little dams in the creek and make stories about Palm Beach and something else, names of different parts.
It was always covered with poison oak.
And there was always a lot of poison oak, which we didn't get at that time, although years later when I was in college, I came up and got poison oak the only time in my life. We'd played in it all those years and never gotten it.
Maybe you developed an immunity from
I
being
guess
around
I
it so much.
lost it when.
Tell us, you mentioned the bathrooms. Can you tell us a
Well, they
little
weren't bathrooms. We
bit? Well, the toilets.
had there was one right along in here that was the original two-holer with a drop down over the creek bank, not into the creek but on the bank. And then my father, I guess when he built our house, put a flush toilet down, a little farther down nearer to the house.
But it was separate.
But it was separate from the house, right over the creek bank. And of course we had potties inside in winter time.
So you had like chamber pots?
Every bed had a chamber pot under it. That was one of my delightful jobs in the morning when I was old enough, was to empty and clean the pots.
Where would you empty them?
Down in the garden with the faucet farther down below the house.
So not into the creek?
No, that did not go into the creek. No, we had it. There was a long row of I forget, Shasta daisies, I think, that bloom profusely in the summertime. You got lots of fertilizer.
Was the appropriate
Anyway, that was where I did the washing. Was the Shasta daisy row.
That's the daisy row. You talked about Ferndale the other day. I had never heard of Ferndale. Can you tell us about that?
Well, it was a summer resort way up the canyon. Robbie has something in his story about it, and it was a place for San Francisco, or mainly I think San Francisco, would take the train to Martinez, and they'd meet them with a horse and buggy or carriage and bring them out here for weekends to this Ferndale Lodge or whatever, it was a hotel. And it was, I imagine, there were a lot of illegal things that went on there. It always gave the impression of being set back in the trees. And
Do you know what period?
well, it was before our day.
Before your day. Oh, I see. Okay, so it wasn't a prohibition.
No, we just heard about it. Although the hotel was still there, we used to play in it. And we'd walk up that far. It was past the Upham place, half mile or so.
Back in.
There's still a Ferndale Road out there. There's still a Ferndale Road.
Yeah, well, that was where it was on that side of the creek, over hidden and back, kind of.
And then the lagoons. Tell us about the lagoons.
Up on here, well, those are still here. They pretty well dry up in summertime, especially a hot summer. There are a couple of good-sized lakes in winter, on a good winter. And theoretically nobody lived there, but this one family set up shacks, and that was their water, and I don't know what they lived on.
Do you remember the family's name?
Sindasich.
Sindasich.
Mm-hmm. There were two Sindasich's families. Part of them lived down right along Alhambra Road. And then this one group lived up there.
Yeah, I think Anton Sindasich lived on the road and married into the Pereira family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know any of those family members?
No.
There was a Luzane. Did you know anybody by that name?
No.
Has the weather changed? Do you think the weather has changed? Tom maybe can answer that. Ben, the weather?
Think the weather's
Do you
changed?
think the weather has changed over the years?
Yes, when we were young, was a particularly a wet area. This was a fairly wet area. The rain would at times last for a week. You'd have just a constant rainstorm, and we haven't had anything like that for years and years and years around here.
And what about the temperature? Do you think it's hotter? Or
It got awfully hot in summer, I remember. And of course, we had no air conditioning of any kind.
There's been too much change in overall weather.
So do you think it's hotter now, Tom, here? than it used to be, or?
Well, you have less rain, so you have more sun. Is about what it amounts to.
When I think of hot weather, I always think of the women and how they dressed. How did your mother dress in those days, Bess?
With petticoats and corsets and the whole bit.
Every day?
Every day. And of course there wasn't any such thing as pants. Always wore dresses, and always things that they were cotton, things that had to be ironed. Petticoats had to be ironed, and all of my school clothes had to be washed and ironed. So when we came home from school, we had to change clothes quickly into home clothes or we were in trouble. And we wore coveralls, had a little drop seat in the back that buttoned across.
The two of you? The two
Yeah,
of you?
yeah.
And what about shoes, or boots, my grandmother used to call them? What kind of shoes did women wear?
Oh, very sensible flat heels, naturally, with lace up. I had to wear lace up shoes, I think, until I was in the 5th or 6th grade. And it used to really infuriate me. I had to wear these shoes that you had to lace up and stockings up to here.
Was that because
That was just
that's what you had, or?
just what my father said we had to wear.
You were a good student, weren't you, Bess?
I was a teacher's pet type.
I think we have an article about you when you graduated. You were
Yeah.
pretty high up in your class, weren't you? Yeah. You don't need to be modest.
Well, I think the article said I was the only one who'd ever had nothing but A's all the way through high school. Something like that.
I think so.
What were your favorite subjects?
Oh, English. Naturally. I mean, that was the easy one. And math. I really enjoyed math and Latin and Spanish. I didn't care that much about. Didn't learn much.
So they actually taught Latin when you were in high school. Did you take Latin, Tom?
No,
Yeah.
I was the stupid one of the family.
And then where did you go, Bess, after high school?
Berkeley.
You went to Berkeley? Which class was that?
33.
Class of 33. That's when you graduated.
Graduated in 33.
From Berkeley?
From Berkeley.
Really?
3 Berkeley alumni here at least. Brett and I.
And what about you, Tom?
Great.
Also,
Were you Berkeley too? What class?
1987.
You're 1 year behind my oldest daughter.
Really? Oh.
She's 86.
Wow.
What class were you, Andrea?
pardon?
What class were
I
you?
didn't go to Berkeley. I graduated from Davis.
Oh,
My father went to Berkeley, and I think 36 is when he graduated.
so he's younger than I am.
I think my
Yeah.
parents were born in 1915,
3 years younger.
and they're both, neither of them with us. So you've lived a long, healthy life.
Yes, I certainly realize it when I think of how few friends I have left of my age group.
Are any of your classmates still?
Yeah, one, my friend from Martinez, who just lives a door from me in Rossmore.
Really?
And I almost invited her today, but
Oh,
she's almost totally blind. She has macular degeneration. And
and she's from Martinez.
yeah,
And where did she live?
in Martinez. I forget, right down near the old high school.
Oh, Susanna
She-
Park
Mhm.
area?
She married the Hart's family from Danville, and Hart's Avenue in Danville is named after her husband's family.
Oh.
There were 5 boys, all went to Martinez High School and were all athletic, about our same age group.
You know, when you're talking about athletics, when I talk to people about Martinez and Alhambra High, sports always comes up. Tom, did you ever play any of the sports? Did you play sports when you were at Alhambra?
No.
No.
Weren't you hit by a discus in the
Oh,
head?
that was you had your daily exercise thing,
Uh-huh.
and we'd go out and play sports then. But I never went out for running or anything like that. I
Football
wasn't fast
or-
enough.
It seems like it was usually the Italian, the youngsters from Italian families that played like football, and he said, going by the names anyway, that's what it seems like. But people always talk about sports when you bring up Alhambra.
He was hit in the head by a discus thrower, and that
Oh,
could have been really serious, and had to go to the doctor and have his head stitched up.
ooh. This was when you were in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
that was playing between classes or after school or something. I don't remember when, but probably it was in the exercise area of the gym business.
So when school would be out, how would you get back to the farm?
Walk.
You walk all the way from Alhambra High?
Well, unless the bus took us. But if you wanted to stay in for sports, I stayed for basketball, and then I'd walk home from,
Really? All the way. And how long would that take you?
hour or so. And a good part of the time there'd be somebody to give you a ride. And in those days we didn't worry about somebody picking you up, giving you a ride. I mean, that's so different from now.
Were the roads out here paved?
Yeah.
They were
Mhm.
paved at that time. Okay. And I understand that you used to wait for the bus.
At the corner right over here.
And who else would be there waiting with you? Were there other children from the valley?
Yeah, well, the Winslows were always there.
Uh-huh.
The Gimettis
Committees?
that was where they waited.
Uh-huh.
The Uphams were farther up. They waited up at the other end.
Would that be Georgine?
Georgine.
Georgine
mhm.
Upham.
And Oliver
Oh,
was
Oliver,
the son.
her son, okay. Talking about the Uphams, they had, I think it was George and Lulu Upham that dammed up the creek and formed Glorietta, the Glorietta Swimming Club. Did you, that was probably before your
That was
time.
before.
Before your time. Were there any remnants of that swimming pool?
I guess there were. We never went up there and played that I remember at the pool.
No, it was Lotto by the time we were able to do it.
Because that was quite a, first of all, quite an endeavor to just dam it up and the way they built that pool.
Well, evidently had a club, and you paid something to belong to the club.
Well, apparently they would have social activities. Did your parents ever participate?
No.
No. They were too
No.
busy, huh?
They didn't have time.
They
But
were too busy.
no.
Let's see, what else?
I was interested in just going back for a moment to something that you mentioned earlier. You were talking about hunting and that sometimes you ate quail, and I was just wondering how much hunting played, how big of a role hunting played in terms of the food that you ate and what kinds of things were hunted.
Quail's the only thing I remember ever hunting for food.
Oh,
Except for a few quail, that was it.
that was about it. Yeah, there was nothing to hunt really.
So was it your dad that would do the
hmm
hunting?
Yeah.
So how often did you get to eat quail? would you say?
Oh, maybe once a year.
Once a year. Okay.
Not daily.
So was that like a big treat?
Yes. Anything different was a treat.
And you mentioned the washing I was just wondering where the washing was done and...
On the back porch, we had a tub, and you had to carry the boiling stuff from the kitchen out onto the back porch and empty it into the tubs, which, I mean, the copper tub was that long and that wide. I mean, this was heavy work, all of it. Hard work, yeah. And clothes got awfully dirty. Eventually we got a washing machine that sort of with a wringer that you lifted them up and then into another tub. And that was a big advance. Just having a wringer so you didn't have to do it by hand.
So how did that work?
Well, you lifted it from the hot water here and put it into this wringer, which you did by hand, which dropped it down into clean water on this, in the second tub on this side, like a double tub.
Are you picturing the wringers here? They're two rollers, okay, and they run the clothes through it and it squeezes the water out.
Yeah, yeah.
You remember all the jokes about women's tits getting caught in them? That was a standard joke at the time.
Told by who? Told among the women?
Yeah.
Or the men.
Or both.
Ooh.
What were holidays like in your family? Did you celebrate Christmas? In
Oh,
any
yes. Christmas was a big holiday. We had my older brother and my cousin, Dr. Potter, and my father's younger sister, Aunt Eva, neither of them ever married, and so they were always part of our close family, just as close as our parents almost. So they all stayed in the house, a little crowded at Christmas time, and other holidays too, but Christmas was always a big event for us. All the family gathered.
Were there presents or just a big meal? How did you...
Well, there were simple presents. A stocking with an orange in the toe, which was something unusual. And little things, really little. And usually we got clothes if we got presents. Which were because my mother made most of my clothes or remade old clothes into ones for me.
And for a Christmas or a holiday meal, what would you have?
Oh, then we'd go all out and have, would we have turkeys? Thanksgiving, we'd buy a turkey and pluck it. I mean, you cleaned it and plucked it and did all the rest. I guess we had beef at Christmas. Well, but it was always a big feast of all kinds of things.
And what about 4th of July? Did you celebrate 4th of July with anything?
We'd go into town and they have a 4th of July parade and a Memorial Day and 4th of July up at the cemetery. Would have ceremonies and politicians would do a little talking. But part of it was just watching the parade.
Down Main Street?
Down Main Street.
Yeah. Are any of your family buried at Alhambra Cemetery?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Your
My
parents?
father, mother, grandparents, my mother's parents, and they're all there.
They're having a tour, this month up there again. Cemetery tour.
I've been twice. I think that's enough. It doesn't change much.
No. There's something else I was going to ask. So holidays were just really a family time.
Yes, definitely family.
Bess, tell us about your family.
Well, this is my oldest son.
And his name is?
John Phillips, and
Now that you're in the sun, if you want to.
I had 3 sons in 3 years,
Oh,
and the second son is in Boise, Idaho, and my youngest son died last August. He had a very sudden, very rapid growing cancer. That the only one in our family that's ever had cancer that I know of.
Yeah.
And that was your youngest son.
That was my youngest son.
That must have been hard
Yes,
to lose a child.
and still miss him. He was the family humorist and funny and
You have good memories, though.
and a very successful businessman. He was a specialist on the Florida Stock Exchange for his whole working life, and a very successful one.
And so do you have grandchildren?
8 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren.
Oh, Bess, aren't you fortunate?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do they call you?
Grandma Bess, usually, because they all have other grandmas, real grandmas, so I'm Grandma Bess.
And do they live nearby so you see them?
Now, John has 4 of them are Johns, and
3 are close by.
3 are close by.
One's on the way to Oregon, and 2 are in Chicago, 2 are in Boise, and 1 in Atlanta.
So you go visit them, the ones that live far away?
Well, we visited them in Chicago and Boise, but haven't been to Atlanta.
And what did you do, what kind of a career did you have? You went to Berkeley, and then what did you do?
Well, I got married and had 3 children, and then I got a divorce and went to work as a secretary in what was a startup insurance company that became one of the big workman's compensation insurance companies. So I had a very happy, successful career in the insurance business.
And when did you retire?
When I met my present husband in 1969.
And how did you meet him?
On a University of California alumni tour,
Oh.
one of their first ones. And he was married at the time, and then his wife died the next year very suddenly, so he remembered me from the tour.
And you live in Rossmore now.
Now we're in Rossmore.
Do you have hobbies? Do you have any hobbies?
Not much. I play bridge now. I used to garden. Now he does the gardening and I play bridge.
That's a good life.
And read. I love reading.
You're a good reader. You said your mother did a lot of handwork, sewing. Did you
Well, I sewed. I made all my own clothes for years. But I never took to the handwork stuff.
and when your mother made your clothes, did she make them by hand or did she have a machine?
She had a Singer sewing pedal machine.
Pedal?
Yeah.
And did you help her?
Yes. Oh, that's what I learned on. That's when I started making my own clothes. But for instance, we saved all the flour sacks and sugar sacks and made underclothes out of them. And she made over a lot of clothes from relatives into clothes for me.
Long days. You must have had long days.
Sure did.
What time would you get up?
5 o'clock in the morning, and then they went to bed early. 8:30, 9 o'clock.
And would you stay up later? When you were growing up here?
No, well, we went to bed too, because we were up early.
Long, hard days. And was Sunday any different?
Nobody worked on Sunday except Mother, of course, doing the cooking. But our father was raised that you didn't play cards or do anything that was any fun on Sundays. But we weren't that strict. We usually just sort of lay around and read books.
Do you remember any of the books? What were your favorite books to read? Any that stand out in your mind?
Oh, usual children's books that we were given.
Did you read the Gene Stratton Porter books?
Yes, yeah.
All of the Limberlost?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of those books?
and a lot of, I read girl books. There's the Bobbsey twins,
Oh, yeah. And Nancy Drew.
Nancy Drew, all
What
of
about
those.
Tom? Did he read much?
Yeah, he read a lot too.
Yeah.
What kind of books did you read, Tom?
The ones I really enjoyed were Griffin's stories about the World War II and so forth.
Oh, that wasn't when you were a child, though.
Huh?
Not when you were a child. He wasn't writing then.
No.
Where did the Griffin family come from?
Ireland.
Ireland. And then
From Scotland to Ireland and Australia and then here.
and didn't some of your family come from Australia?
Yeah, that was the Griffin.
That was the Griffin.
But they went to there from Ireland.
And which generation went then to Australia?
That was grandfather's.
Grandfather.
Went there to work in the gold mines.
So it was your grandfather that came from
From-
Australia?
Here, he went from the gold mines there when they were petered out to the coal mine here.
In Nortonville?
Mhm.
That's what brought him
Somerville.
to Somerville.
Yeah.
That's what brought him to this area.
Mhm.
Was there someone here that had told them about the opportunities, or
No,
he must have heard about it somehow
it's all in that.
in the book?
In those, the papers that you have there has it pretty much in detail about their coming here.
Bess
His
and
coming
her
here.
son have written a story that kind of put together the story of their family, which we have in the museum archives.
Yes.
And right, I was remembering the Australia
Mhm.
connection from that. Well, how much more time do we have?
I'm not sure really. Probably I'd say about 5 or 10 minutes.
5 or 10 minutes? Well, we only have 5 or 10. John, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
What my memories are growing up and being at the ranch fairly frequently was how incredibly hard Tom worked. My mother always worked very hard as well, but he would not only put in a full day at the office, he would pick me up typically at 40th and Broadway. On Friday night, we'd come out and there was still 2 or 3 hours, so daylight, so we physically worked 2 or 3 hours, got up early Saturday and Sunday morning and worked straight through until it was time to me to find a way back home. We lived in Berkeley for school starting on Monday. All the buildings here Tom either built or had to maintain all the time, plus just a good part of what's necessary in running a ranch, plus a full-time job, plus a family. So it was an incredibly, and he did everything. And he built boats and sailed those, and it wasn't 100% just maintaining standard of living. Canning, we all grew up canning all the time. I remember well the old house had a cellar. You were describing it as a room. My recollection was that the cellar that you went down this sort of mysterious looking stairway off the front porch creaked a lot when you raised the door and you went down in it, and there was that traditional one light bulb hanging from the ceiling, all mud. It was just dug down into the dirt under the house, so it wasn't enclosed, but lots of shelving. So all the canned food was supported in all this shelving, plus the milk. So these cans of milk all over the place. I was very young. Tradition, any Sunday we were up here as a family was to catch a chicken right here. The chicken house was right here, and the chickens were running around. We were up to free range long before it became up to the minute as far as what you order in the restaurant now at a higher price. My grandfather would cut the head off, and of course the chicken ran around with no head. Kids were all incredibly curious about that, and then it went into a big boiling pot of water and had to be pulled out, and all the feathers pulled out. guess you did all typically the carving up of it.
Well, and it had to be opened and cleaned and
Yep. Kind of coming up with all the pieces.
carefully.
And, but that was a traditional main part of the Sunday dinner up here. And, it was a level of work that today's world, you can read about it, you can hear about it, but just no one sees anything like that anymore. It was just a constant level of hard work.
Do you think you could work like that today, having a different kind of life?
I don't think I'd want to.
Yeah.
I made some clear personal decisions out of growing up the way I did.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do.
I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
You've worked pretty hard in your life,
No,
too.
certainly worked long hours,
Different
but
kind of work.
physically, I certainly never worked the way Tom worked well into current age.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched our grandfather, who died when I was 20. And one of our major challenges was keeping him out of the middle of the work, because he was 93, 94, 95, and he didn't want to just sit there. If Tom and I were tarring one of the roofs or building a wall or whatever we were doing, he wanted to be right there. So the challenge was to keep him sitting over in the side somewhere.
He got a hernia when he was 94 or 5, up working on the re-shingling the roof.
Yeah. He was.
That was his injury that he moaned about the most his last few years, was that hernia.
Well, he got up at 4 every morning and had a wood stove. He always lived in his house. Got a roaring fire going, got oatmeal going, and water going. And of course, the kitchen had about half an inch worth of soot on all the walls, along with everything else. So we had a big birthday, or I guess it was a birthday present. We're all the kids, Tom's first set of children. And my brothers and I all got together, and Tom's first wife, her job was to keep him away so he didn't know what we were doing. She had to keep him away from the house, and I had this view that in the morning we'd get it all cleaned up, and I took took this sponge, went over the wall in the kitchen, one swoop. All of a sudden, it sort of turned white. So, it was a little bigger than I kind of had in mind. But we clearly got things better than they were. And,
Cleaned it up.
well, we got a running start on it. But, this was just remember, we all grew up, no money was the standard of our growing up. And just as it was Mom and Tom's. Mom raised us as a secretary. There was absolutely never any money, and so my younger brother and I decided that wasn't going to be the way things stayed. So it hasn't.
I think it's a pretty typical American story. I think that's...
It sounds like centuries ago, though.
Amazing how rapidly you get to this point.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting behind the camera, hearing about how did I get here. But
Well, I don't know how much more time. I want to thank you both. This has been absolutely a wonderful, wonderful morning.
She's thanking
I'm
us.
thanking you, Tom. And we'll be sharing this with you and with other people and your families. And we just want to thank you so very much for your generosity and sharing.
We don't get a chance to reminisce this often, so thank you.
Yeah. How about if we came back again?
Well, I think we've said it all.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Bess. And thank you,